Coming up, a Sad Styles production. Get into it!
And welcome to the Retrograde,
the video game podcast where this week we talk about Neil Druckmann's The Last of Us, but this time on HBO.
Oh, my name's Pedro Pascal, and with me as always is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself.
Mikey Caronworth.
Mikey Caronworth, very good. Oh my goodness. We are here, we're finally going to be talking about The Last of Us, something that we've been talking about for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, us talking about The Last of Us, that's not new. We've done it. No. In fact, we have an episode, if you go back, 2-3 years on this podcast, where you and I guess it can't be 3 years ago. Close, though. Where you and I do like a huge in-depth spoiler cast on The Last of Us Part 2 after both of us had finished it. That was one of my favorite episodes ever to record, and I think it kind of says a lot because you and I both love this franchise. You know, we have some qualms with it. We kind of like a lot that has to do with it. I know I have some picks some nits that I have picked with the franchise as well.
Oh, yeah.
But this week, I say we just get into a huge podcast about The Last of Us, our impressions of it, our history with it, and then looking forward to the, breaking down what happened in season 1, episode 1 of the TV show, and then our predictions on the future of the show. What do you think?
I think that sounds pretty. Oh, that sounds pretty good. I need no excuse to talk about The Last of Us. The Last of Us is kind of put a stamp on this generation of video games, especially in the last decade, of where we're going with video games and where we're at and how they have changed so drastically too. So you're right. We've not always seen eye to eye on them, but I think we've always appreciated them. I think that's fair.
You may call us the Abby and Ellie of the podcasting community. Some 100%. People agree with me, some people agree with you, but the people who agree with me are correct, and they are Abby heads. And I'm just going to say that.
You know what? It's funny. There's so many video game comparisons where I'm like, yeah, clearly Mikey's Waluigi and I'm Wario. I get that. Like, there's so many different, that's absolutely. If we looked at Abby and Ellie, which one's Abby, which one's Ellie?
Good question. Well,
I don't think there's no easy one here.
I don't think we can go to physiology because neither of us are as small as Ellie or as large as Abby.
Absolutely not.
But
Abby would fold me like a table.
Yeah, and I would thank her for it.
I'd be like, thank you, ma'am.
So I think we have to go kind of like personality wise, and I think the inability to let things go makes me more like Ellie.
And her general, the way that she speaks and short temper makes me think I'm Ellie. Yeah. I'm always trying to stab people.
Yes.
Yeah.
A handsome man also killed my father, so I think I'm like Abby. I don't know. I also love golf, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Oh, does that? I don't know. Does that?
Well, she's pretty good with the 4-iron, as we've learned in The Last of Us.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You have unrequited love. You find love in all the wrong places.
That's true.
That people won't love you back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much where it ends.
I think it is.
Oh, I'm immune to all diseases. But yeah, okay. And sorry,
so
forgot about
this
that.
brings up a little bit of look, if you haven't seen a single episode of The Last of Us, obviously, if you're listening to this the day it comes out, there is only one episode that has been released so far. If you haven't seen anything, we're going to be skirting along the lines of there may be mild spoilers just based on our history with the game that I think is going to be pretty unavoidable. But if you're a fan of The Last of Us, that I think means that you've played the game. And I wonder how many people are out there listening to this, like the people who like video games and are listening to this and are interested in watching The Last of Us. How many of them actually don't know the story of The Last of Us Part 1? What do you think that percentage is? How do you break that down?
I would honestly say it's 25%. This is getting HBO Sunday night treatment. This is the premier spot of all television, is HBO Sunday night. That is where all the great television shows that we have loved over the years and some abject failures have been.
It's not television, though.
I'm sorry, the home box office. It's not television.
It's HBO.
It's HBO. So that's, what's funny though? We have a listener to this podcast who I text with, and she had never played the game, but she's familiar with the game enough because she listens to this podcast. So we talk about it all the goddamn time. And so she was saying, she wrote back, actually, you know what? I'm going to read her questions later because she was saying, here's some of my observations from, and questions from episode 1 from a non-game player. And I thought it was very interesting to think about, from that perspective.
So this I love that we're getting into already because it's so weird to be you and I have always been on the inside of we're gamers. We love playing games. So it's hard for us sometimes to tell what escapes the echo chamber of the life of a gamer and kind of gets out there into popular culture. And the number of times someone has said to me, Like, hey, are you excited about this show that's based on a video game on HBO? Like, they know so little about the franchise and about games in general that all they know is that there's a very big franchise coming to HBO and that it's based on a video game. My parents are included in that list. And I'm like, this could be the thing that really breaks out for the crossroad that really lets people outside of the gaming realms know how good a story can be that's contained within a video game.
You know, it's funny because we talked about this, you know, if you're more interested in some of the crossover stuff and some of the, you know, TV adaptations of video games or movie adaptations of video games, we've been talking about a lot over the last year. So go back and listen to some of the other episodes or over at the Mushroom Club, which is our patreon.com/The Retrograde Podcast. We talk about this a lot. So like when we start thinking about an HBO show, a prestige show on Sunday night that is all about a video game that's really good and we love, and not only that, but something we're going to get into, but the creator of the video game is an executive producer and co-wrote the show. Yeah. Whoa. Not like, thanks guys, appreciate it. Go take a spot in the sidelines. You know, before we start getting ahead of ourselves and going, this is it. This is the future. All right. This is the same calendar year that Uncharted came out. And, you know, they like in which they tried their best. Hey, they tried their best.
Wait, it's not the same calendar year.
Same 12 months.
Oh, I see. Same rolling 12-month period.
Yeah, rolling 12 months.
Different understandings of how the calendar works.
I listen to Pope Gregory. I know the Gregorian calendar is the only one for me. You know, so we're not so far away that these adaptations can still be kind of abject disasters where they're going like, this one's for the kids, and you're like, oh man, where you watch Last of Us and you go, man, that's the opposite of what they're trying to do right now here.
Right. Yeah, I you know, this one's for the kids, fine. Give me the one that's for the boys. I mean, that's
for
what we're here for. Give me the Duke Nukem HBO show. I want that show.
Yes. I want to be in the theaters, just like when all the portals opened up at the end of Endgame, and where Duke Nukem goes, shake it, baby, and everyone goes, yeah, all right, he said it, and we're high-fiving.
I honestly believe this to my core. We are going to get another Duke Nukem game. And it's going to be Duke Nukem in the world of cancel culture, like a Duke Nukem that is very self-reflective. Like there's no, and I say cancel culture knowing that it isn't really a thing anyway. But I guarantee you that there is a version of Duke Nukem that is on someone's table that's being pitched as like, this is where we should take the franchise.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be, you know, co-written by people that maybe I don't see eye to eye with or something like that. Like Barstool Sports presents Duke Nukem.
Barstool presents it. Yeah, hey. I could
honestly, enough power.
I'd watch it.
So Mikey, Last of Us, when this got announced, I remember you having some reservations about this. You were like, I'm not so sure about this. You know, I know you've seen the first episode. This is a little bit of a kind of a hard question to answer, but like, how do you circle the square here? How do you feel now after feeling that way?
So here's the thing. We know that we're probably going to have a lot of new listeners just to this episode alone, based on the fact that The Last of Us is such a popular entity at the moment. So it makes sense for me to kind of reestablish my baseline of what my thoughts are on video game to movie or video game to TV adaptations. And to start, I've gone on record to say, I don't think that when you're comparing the best to the best of video games to movies or TV, that there's anything that a TV show or a movie can do to add to what we've already experienced in the video game. I think that because video games have interactive elements, sure, but they also have cutscenes and they have writing, they have stories. The only thing that separates like a movie from a video game is the lack, in the case of the movie, of interactivity. That's basically it. Otherwise, you're just sitting there watching a story unfold. So when they announced that The Last of Us was going to be an HBO TV series, I wasn't excited about it. You know, I like the fact that there is some, I'm not like a hipster being like, oh, we're cool and you guys like keep your hands on your own stuff. Like don't come touch our backyard. But I didn't
always touching backyards.
Stop touching backyards.
Like they're always touching backyards.
Too many people are touching backyards. That's why I don't watch The Sandlot. That movie is just very triggering for me.
That's why I always have my neighbor Wilson always watching my backyard. Don't touch it. Don't let him touch it. And he's always like, okay, all right, just checking.
By the way, here's the thing about Home Improvement that I will say before I finish my point.
Finally, we're talking about it.
Back in the day, you would see Wilson in Home Improvement, and there was no way that you could find out what Wilson looked like. Now you just fucking Google what the actor is, and you're like, that's Wilson. I get it. Like, that's it. It's a totally different thing now.
I have to, like, you know how, like, there's, like, gun safes? I swear to God, I should have a phone safe for when I watch shows so that I'm not spending half the time looking at IMDb going, like, oh, yeah, okay, right.
100%.
And, like, keeping my eyes off a TV show that I want to watch.
Where's this person? I actually, when this show started, so 9 p.m. on a Sunday, I made sure, there are very few shows that I will set aside my 9 p.m. slot to watch. Yeah. And I texted my girlfriend, and I said, it's on. I'm putting my phone away. So... Good night and good luck. So I wanted
send up a flare if you need anything.
I wanted to focus on it, but the reason so to get back to what I was saying, I didn't think when they announced The Last of Us for HBO that there was anything they could do to improve upon the story that I had already experienced. I thought we were only ever going to get, at best, a 1-to-1 relation of the story, and at worst a watered down version, or a version that people thought would be palatable for a non-gaming audience, and I wasn't very excited about it. What about you?
And I was really excited about it because I always thought, I really have not liked any video game adaptations, and even some of the ones that people do like, I'm like, okay. Like, I'm not the biggest Sonic guy, I'm not the biggest Detective Pikachu guy, which I think are the last two that people have thought, okay, these are not bad. How about that? These are palatable. You know what I mean? And I'm like, God, it still feels like a cheapening version of the thing that I liked, right? Very winking, very like whatever. And no one's ever tried to do this like very earnest, very well put together adaptation. And
except for Max Payne.
Well, sorry. Oh, yeah, right. But obviously, you know that whenever I speak about this, Max Payne and then everything else.
Yeah, you have to. And you do that all the time, and it just irks me a lot because
I know it does.
You don't give Mark Wahlberg the respect that he so rightfully deserves.
You know, jokes aside, I really don't. But rightfully and Last of Us felt like one of these properties where you couldn't do this thing. It's not like Ellie's like, you're probably wondering how I got here. Yes. You know, while she's killing a zombie. You were never going to get that. You actually felt like it was going to be a real thing. And also, it really helps that somebody like Neil Druckmann does care about this property so deeply, clearly. It's kind of like some of these great auteurs from video games that have been protective and not allowing some of their properties to be made. It felt like he would only be allowed to be made if it was under like the most seriousness and care that, you know, that it was required.
Yeah. And, you know, we've had so many scenarios in which an auteur in the gaming industry is talked about as someone who could make the jump between making games and making movies. You know, Hideo Kojima is another one that they always say, they're like, he's got to get his hand on movies. And I always come out from the woodwork and I say, why? He makes such good games. Why do we want to limit him with a medium that doesn't allow interactivity? And so that's kind of my major concern. But I also do understand that having an outside medium pay attention to a franchise that we like in the medium of gaming can also do a lot to advance the star power of the industry. Maybe, like, you know, in God of War Ragnarok, we have Richard Schiff, who's made the jump, who's a phenomenal actor, and he's lending his voice to Odin in God of War Ragnarok. So I think that there is some legitimacy, if the industry needs legitimacy, I don't know, but it at least opens people's eyes to the fact that there could be more to it, and I kind of hope that what The Last of Us does in TV form to the video game form is similar to what The Walking Dead did to comics at a time where it was like, you look at The Walking Dead, you know, before it got to season 23 and it got a little bit played out, it took this comic franchise that everyone knew was like a good human story and said, we're going to give you that good human story. It's not about the blood and guts. It's about the human interactions. And that's so similar to The Last of Us that I think there's a lot that they could work with to make this right.
Well, both zombie properties too. You know, it's funny that, like, I think I agree with you. I agree with you that there's a little bit of video games, like, okay, video games, and we don't need anyone to care about our thing. We think it's really good. Right. That being said, the way movies and TVs are made, it's, you know, IP farming and stuff like that. And video games feel like one of the freshest, most untapped resources they can get to. And since the beginning of making television and movies, it's always been adapted from books and TVs to movies and movies to TV and, you know, music now and like real life things. And it feels like video games, it was inevitable that it was going to get that. And so if it's going to happen, it is going to happen. Mm-hmm. You want it to be done well. And this is the one that gives you hope. It's almost like the Ellie, this Last of Us is the Ellie of video games adaptations where you're like, oh, this is the one that's going to save us all.
It's got to be the one. And we'll see whether or not we let this thing gets sacrificed for the greater good at the end of this season. Who knows?
And Mikey is the Abby with his opinion, trying to kill. No, sorry,
trying to snuff the life out, beat it with a 4-iron. Yeah. So before we get into, because obviously, you know, we're a day removed, we're less than 24 hours removed from you and I both watching the pilot of The Last of Us season 1, but let's have the audience kind of familiarize themselves with us and with our relationship to The Last of Us. So in terms of we've talked about, you know, first hearing about what our thoughts are when there was an announcement that the game was going to be turned into a movie. But Andrew, what is your relationship and your history with The Last of Us? When did you first become familiar with the franchise as a game?
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to kind of warm up to the idea of the franchise?
Well, it's funny. 2013 is when The Last of Us came out, which is insane. It's 10 years ago. And at that point, I did not have a PlayStation 4. This sounds so insane to talk about now, but is that I had an Xbox. I was an Xbox kid, and eventually I was playing, and I kept hearing about The Last of Us, and I was a big BioShock fan, which to me is a very similar game. They're not realistic at all, like they're not on that level, but that the story is really driving the game.
Sure.
You just want to get through to the next part to see what's going on, and so I was a huge fan of that and would replay it constantly when I had time. And I kept hearing about The Last of Us. And so it probably was 2014, probably end of 2014 area, where I got a PlayStation 4 with the sole purpose of playing Last of Us.
Yeah.
And I came with it, and I beat it so quickly. And I have now beaten it a couple of times and shown people doing it, to the point that even you know, as the Shivi show was going to come on, my player one and I started up the game, which, by the way, I'll bring up later, is a great thing to start the game again and then watch the episode, watch the pilot. But is that it is something I've replayed and constantly gone back to, and something I've yearned for, because I wish there was more storytelling like this, and with characters that are grounded and not perfect, but not over the top cartoon vaudevillian, you know, villains. It's something I've always loved, and especially, you know, we can get to number 2 later, but it's something I've always loved and always wanted more of. So what's your relationship with Last of Us?
Yeah. And to clarify, you know, a lot of people, their first experience with The Last of Us was obviously on PlayStation 4. I think they were giving away The Last of Us, a code for The Last of Us on the PlayStation 4, but it released far back enough that it was actually originally a PlayStation 3 game, which is what I played it on. I was following the release of this game from its announcement. Literally from day one, the first announcement, I couldn't wait for it. I was picturing more of a survival horror, but like emphasis on the survival. Like I thought that the scavenging was going to have to do with food and like a bullet, as opposed to bullets.
More like Red Dead? I mean, not Red Dead. Sorry, Resident Evil?
Yeah, a little bit, but honestly more survival, like literal survival. Like we're out in the wilderness. We need to eat tonight, as opposed to just we need to kill enemies, so we need to have bullets in order to do so. So I was actually a little bit disappointed by The Last of Us Part 1 when I first played it. And not necessarily because it was a bad game, but because what I wanted out of it was different than what it ended up being. I at this point in my life was first getting used to the narrative dissonance that was so present in a lot of games that I was playing, where, and I talk about this all the time, especially in The Last of Us 2, a very important scene will be happening, and yet I have an urge to flip through filing cabinets as like major plot points are taking place. And it just feels like a very, like no one in their right mind would be doing these things at these times. And yet I'm like, the collector in me is like, let me just go check in this room over here and see if there's a filing cabinet where I can get half of a water bottle.
Well, I'm playing a game now. I'll talk about it next week because I don't want to dilute our Last of Us conversation. But in this game, if you do not hurt, if they're like, we need to get to the chopper will take off and you fail the mission if you take your time. And I was thinking about you the whole time, going like, oh, this is Mikey. Mikey would love this. Mikey would go like, you know,
it's
hey,
great.
You tell me one thing, I got to do it. I'll do it, you know?
Because the exact opposite of that is, you know, to relate it to The Last of Us Part 2, is there's a scene where, you know, no spoilers on this, not really necessary, but a friend in your group is literally being held hostage and is potentially being tortured. And you get into the house where this person is being held, and you have the option to start rooting through drawers as they're screaming downstairs. And I'm like, no, don't even give me the option to do this. It happened in Ragnarok. I was playing God of War Ragnarok recently, and I just get to a certain area, and there's this guy leading me through this pathway, and he's waiting for me. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, yeah, clearly I have to go here. My purpose was to be where I am right now. And I just turn around, and there's a chest behind me for no reason. And I walk over and open it. And it's like, why put that? Why do that? So that element of dissonance there was one thing where everyone was talking about how great the story was for The Last of Us Part 1, and I agreed with it, but I thought the gameplay got in the way of The Last of Us a little bit, in spite of the fact that overall it left a phenomenal impression on me. I still think it's a masterpiece of a game, and I think it came at a very important time where narrative stories often gave you a protagonist who could who you could shape however you wanted. You made the decisions for the protagonist. That's what gaming was all about in 2013.
Yes.
And then here comes Joel, the father figure who you just want to be amenable to the idea of nurturing and nourishing Ellie, and he's doing the wrong thing all the time, and yet you're the one controlling him. And that idea of playing a game where you don't agree with the decisions being made and yet have to make them because you are the player character was great. And that's kind of the main element that made me like, okay, regardless of how I feel about rooting through filing cabinets, there's something special about this game, and I'm going to keep it in my mind up until obviously The Last of Us 2 coming out. So
yeah, like rooting through file simulator that you have separately, that really took your time up, which was good. I agree with you, and I'm glad to hear that. And it's so funny that I think it's very similar. Actually, I kind of brought it up by accident, even though under my brain, in my brain, I'm always thinking about Red Dead in some capacity. But there's something to be said about the Red Dead 1 to Red Dead 2, and I think it changes your legacy and your impression of the franchise. And I think Last of Us is very similar, as it is with most things. You see the sequel, you play the sequel, and it will change your opinion on number 1 or number 2 or no matter what it is, because you're human, and that's the way it works. And I think number 2 did an amazing thing, which we're not going to talk about, but like it did an amazing thing of your perspective on number 1. And I think you're forever changed if having played number 2 to look back on it. And I think that perspective is really interesting going into it because, it's fun to see Ellie as a kid. It's fun to see her with her wide-eyed open to like excited what to do. It's fun to see Joel as a real dickhead. Yeah. It's, all that kind of stuff. And it is fun because where the story's going. So it's, so much more warm. But, I want to go back and play those games, and I'm so glad I got that opportunity with my player 1 right now because it isn't always the way you remember. You kind of soften over some of the rougher parts. You kind of forget whole characters sometimes. Even going through the cast list for the TV show, I'm like, wait, who? Oh, yeah, okay, right. And so I'm very curious to go relive that kind of in a different perspective, almost like a third person kind of view of it. Yeah,
or like a companion, like a third screen or a second screen to watching the TV show. I thought about doing that, but for whatever I did forget about the original Last of Us, I'm like, you know what? Let me forget about it a little bit and just relive it in the story, so I'm not constantly aware of what's going to happen. Now, the detriment to that is I won't always be aware of when the story changes from what it was originally. I will often have lost that thread a little bit, but I have been enjoying it, or at least I did the last episode in kind of feeling lost in the story. Like, I don't remember if that person was there or if that's exactly how it happened, but now because of that, it feels pretty fresh. So I think I'd love to kind of get into the story of the Last of Us, the TV show a little bit, or our impressions of it. But in order to kind of transition over to it, actually, you know what? To establish this, we've kind of said it, we kind of talked around it a little bit, but to establish us and our personalities, are you an Abby or an Ellie person in your core? Who do you side with most?
Ellie.
I'm Abby.
Yeah.
I am Abby.
Yeah,
and if you want to hear why, go way back when Andrew and I had legitimately probably a 45-minute debate just on this topic alone when we recorded this back when The Last of Us 2 first came out. An incredibly fun conversation. Yeah,
that was so good. I was so frustrated by you.
I hated you so much.
God, I just wanted to absolutely just put you in a full Nelson and smash your face open. I'm Ellie. Just well, we can't get into it, but yes, absolutely.
And then how about this? Who do you like playing as more, Abby or Ellie?
Abby.
Yeah, same with me. I'm an Abby fan myself.
Abby, like, it's just such a brute. Somebody, by the way, if you had not played the game and have only watched a television show, you're probably like, well, I can't wait to meet this Abby. And I'll be like, well, 2.5 years from now, you probably will. And it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
Considering HBO's release schedule. Because Craig Mazin, when they said that they did the show, they said, I'm not doing an open-ended Game of Thrones thing. We're not going to write our own story for these games. We're going to do game 1 is season 1, game 2 is season 2. And that's it. And then we're done. And you know what? To Craig, I love you. That is amazing. Do not change anything. That's fantastic.
That is fantastic. And yeah, so Abby obviously being a season 2 mainstay, we probably won't get hear hide nor hair of Abby. But so we'll kind of move on from that a little bit. Let's talk about this in order to transition into the TV show, Andrew. In general, I kind of opened this up by saying I don't think that there's anything that a TV or movie adaptation of a video game can do that the video game didn't do itself. However, we're dealing with a 10-year-old game and there's probably a lot that can be fixed or changed. What do you think the show can or will do that the game couldn't or didn't do, and that you're maybe excited to see take place on screen?
I bet you they show some more details of people that are not main characters of the show. I don't mean that, like, who's that guy? Like, well, that's Fred, and he's doing, I'm having a tough day. Like, I don't think it's that. It's more, you're in, the thing that you could do in TV that you can't do in a game is interstitial shots of people doing stuff. Sure. When people are doing stuff in the TV show, you're like, this is good. It is grounding the world that I am learning that this is, okay, cool. Like Joel having a job. I don't remember Joel having a job in the game, but showing this little 30 seconds of him throwing bodies into the fire is giving a perspective of, like, what does he do all day? Oh, interesting. Oh, this is people do this. Oh, that's interesting. And I think those are the kind of things that you can show. Like, if you're driving down the street and you cut to somebody on the sidewalk and he's asking for money, you're like, oh, right. So there are poor still. Okay, they're struggling to eat. Okay, that's interesting. But in a game, you'd just blow right by it. Let alone, you might have the opportunity to skip through it. So there is a big change.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think you're the same way. In a narrative game, I never skip the cutscenes the first time through. You never do. But I agree that, as often as I say that I don't think there's a ton that movies can do that TV shows don't, when there is a narrative direction that seems to be hesitant towards the idea of changing the perspective, like literally where the camera is and what it's looking at, you're right. You cannot build as much of a side story. Like the entire scene that takes place between Tess, when Tess is getting tortured a little bit, in my mind, I don't remember anything like that happening in The Last of Us, because everything has to go from the lens of either Joel or Ellie in the movie, and who weren't present during this scene in the TV show.
Totally. I think she refers to it. I think something happens where, like, they roughed her up or something like that. Yeah. If I can remember from a week ago, which it's unbelievable I can't. And I think it's the same thing that when Sarah, Joel's daughter, which I guess, do you want to just kind of get into the episode a little bit?
Yeah. Let's naturally kind of progress into it there. Yeah.
Is that the neighbors are not characters in the game. Sarah and Joel's neighbors are not in the game. They are the first kill that Joel does. Joel has a family friend or a neighbor, someone that Sarah knows, that tries to get in, and Joel shoots him. And it's like, oh my God, that's really dramatic. The TV show allows you to know their names, go over to their house, see what their life is like. And also, can I just say, not showing a clicker in the first episode, thank you. That is so great. I love it. Seeing slow transitions, seeing slow evolution, and seeing that grandmother start to twitch in her chair. Oh God.
That was, and the grandma twitching in her chair in the background, not in focus, was great. Yes. Was a great choice. And I'm very curious to see what Neil Druckmann, this is probably something that has to come in the commentary down the line, but like what his requests were on things they can do. How much of that was Neil Druckmann? How much of that was Craig Mazin? How much of that was someone else? Is Neil kind of learning as he goes, or does he have ideas of things he's wanted to do but couldn't do in a video game? Because this is something very specific, but like in a video game, you're never going to have someone out of focus in the background. That's just not something you do, because everything is in focus. Focus is not a limitation of a video game. So camera tricks and typical things that a director would do to tell a story based on the limitations or capabilities of a medium are entirely different in TV versus in video games. So I like that a lot. And that's part of what I think the TV show will do that is different than the video game. And it's also more consistent direction and narrative control, in the sense that there are elements of a video game that bloat out the feeling of playing it. They tack on an hour here by having a fetch quest or something that just makes you double back for no reason whatsoever, or the rooting through filing cabinets. You know, you only have to show Pedro Pascal root through a couple things and like duct tape together a bottle to like a knife or something like that to tell me that they're scavenging. But in the video game, because it's an element of your day-to-day, minute-to-minute, second-to-second gameplay, it does get in the way of the narrative a little bit and kind of bloats it. So I think that in terms of a focused, dedicated narrative, they might have a little bit more fat that they can cut off of the story.
Well, for sure. You know, I will say, so we're going to talk about like things that were different and stuff, but I will say just over top, I can't believe how much it is a 1-for-1 for the video game. I can't, I am shocked that they did that. Like, and I mean that in the best way possible. There are not only shots, but specific lines that they say that I'm like, oh wow, that is right from the video game. The whole scene, especially once Joel kills the neighbor, the drive out of their cul-de-sac to the highway, off the highway, and down to where Sarah is shot is almost 1-to-1. Like, it's unbelievable. Really? Even Sarah's lines from the back of the car, like Joel, she's got a kid. He's like, yeah, so do we. So someone else will come by. That is literally 1-for-1. It's unbelievable. The house on fire, the highway turning. It's great. The only change that I will say is that the government officer that does eventually kill Sarah, he shows more remorse in the game, which is funny. And I think that's a little change. He does, because he's like, stop where you're going. He's like, what do I do? And he's like, okay. And he goes, yeah, but she's a kid. And he says, like, with like trepidation, he's like, yeah, but man, she's a kid. And he's like, all right, I understand. And he shoots. Whereas this one kind of seems a little more gung-ho about killing people.
You know what? So it's interesting because there are certain lines in that sequence of events that are just kind of like perfect. You don't need to change them. Someone else will come along, and Pedro Pascal selling those lines. He's so good at Joel. So good. The thing is, though, like the idea of the but she's a kid is almost a bit too much. And that's where the ability to go look back at something that's now 10 years old. And I'm sure Neil Druckmann was probably the first person to say, look, not all my lines were perfect, and here's my chance to kind of rewrite them. And I'm sure he loves the opportunity to do that.
Well, the idea that, like, you know, what's the Lorne Michaels quote? It's not, the show doesn't go on because it's ready. The show goes on because it's 11:30.
Yes.
Most people would edit for the rest of their life and never release the project because they're never going to be finished with it. And I think, Neil Druckmann's like, great, here's a bunch of stuff I wanted to change. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Hey, how delightful of a change that is. And I got really excited really quickly when I was like, oh my God, it's the video game. And I was like, that's awesome. That is so cool. And we're talking about like recognition. You don't need recognition. I get it. But isn't that the nicest recognition in the world? Like, hey, I don't want to change very much.
Sure.
Like, whoa, cool. You know?
Do you think Neil Druckmann has an element to him where it's like, he's just been called up to the big leagues? Like, even though he is the guy in gaming, especially when it comes to telling a narrative story, do you think he's got like almost imposter syndrome right now? Or do you think he's like, I can fucking do this. I've been doing this.
You know what? And I think 1,000% he does. There's just no way around it. And even though, you know, Craig Mazin just came off of Chernobyl, that's the show that he created and wrote and won Emmys for, and is really good. And if anyone hasn't watched it, you should watch it. It's really, really good. They probably costed just as much as The Last of Us. You know what I mean? So they worked with the same budget. And
no, The Last of Us budget is higher. The Last of Us's budget is equivalent to the first, I think, 4 or 5 seasons of Game of Thrones combined.
Wow, really? Yeah. I thought it was gonna be like $80 million or something like that.
It's like one of the higher budgets that they've worked with. It's pretty impressive.
Wow, good for them. And so it's like you go in there and you're like, even though I have had the scope and I've done all these amazing things, it is hard not that and it's also, by the way, like, there's no way that the executive at HBO is not going to Craig Mazin and going like, so what do you think? And Neil's like, well, and he's like, Craig.
Yeah.
He's the one that has made a show that I really like. You know what I mean? So there has to be a little bit of that, even though the fact that he's on there and given that much responsibility means that there has to be a certain level of trust.
Yeah, I hear you there. So let's, that original question of what do you think the show can do that the TV show didn't, let's turn that on its head. What do you think the show kind of by nature will get worse than the video game?
That's a really good question. I think video games can sell camp really well. They can sell large concepts really well that 100%. that are not hard to swallow, because in a genre of video gaming, the lines don't always have to be well written. You can got to go like, yeah, they got to explain a huge concept, and we got to understand that. In a TV show, you're kind of more naked. You're kind of, there's nowhere to hide with that. And so I bet you you're going to get a Joel line that you're like, What? Like, okay, all right, I guess that's what we're going with.
Sure.
Because the other one, too, is the game is, 40 to 60 hours. It's a really big game, right? And the TV show will be 9 hours or just over 9 hours. So there's a lot of stuff that they got to compress and, really become exposition machines. So I bet you that part of it as well.
Yeah, I definitely, I think you hit the nail on the head too with the idea of like camp in video games. And maybe it's just a newer medium so they can get away with things like that. But I think there's also an element of showing versus telling in video games that comes across as like, we know as gamers, when you show us a bloater, for example, that thing is big and ugly because it represents a different game mechanic. I almost hope that The Last of Us, the TV show, doesn't show things like bloaters. I don't want it to show something like the Rat King, which you got from The Last of Us Part 2. I don't think we need it, because I think that showing something like that in a TV show that takes itself this seriously is going to come across as silly. Unless the design is perfect, unless Guillermo del Toro is here pulling the strings in the background. But I just feel like it's going to be really difficult to sell why we're seeing what we're seeing when there is no gameplay implication to something like a bloater.
Right, and we do know that like a tank version of one of the clickers is in it, just because it's in one of the trailers, and so and they keep doing it. Like it was at the end of 3 different trailers where like he's kind of getting up, and you're like, whoa, that's very scary. Yeah. And I will say, so like the thing is, one of the big changes is the opening scene of the whole show when they're on the talk show,
right? And
like from the '60s, and they're explaining what the next threat could be. And you know what? Great addition, because if you start a video game and they're like, hey, heads up, these mushroom zombies are killing us. As a video game player, you don't think twice. You're like, yes. Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. Got to kill them. All right, cool. As a TV show, you're like, okay, wait, what? Why would that be? And it's just showing the two differences between the two. And I think they handle it really well with a 45-second scene that's kind of funny and ending really creepily. And I thought that was a great addition. And it's also hard to separate. In 2013, 2014, when we were playing this game and it came out, is well before we ever knew what COVID-19 was, and the world hadn't gone through a pandemic. It is hard to remove ourselves from this situation of watching these people be isolated and quarantined and all this kind of stuff during that we can watch it and not think that we haven't changed a lot too, and that's a huge reflection on us.
That's a great point, and it's unavoidable. Never mind a change of the medium itself. You cannot go back and experience the story of The Last of Us without injecting a little bit of your own personal experiences to it now. But I loved the opening scene with the talk show, the idea of a fungi having the capability of doing this is like simultaneously you're like, okay, great. You're setting the premise. I heard there was an interview where they were basically talking about why they included that, Craig Mazin, because he basically said he wanted there to be something. He said what fascinated him about Chernobyl was the fact that sure, it melted down when it did, but it could have melted down a week earlier, or it could have melted down a month later. The what that means is there are meltdowns that exist in this world that are possible that we don't know about yet. So what he wanted to do was set up this fact or this conceit that maybe this has been possible all along and we just didn't realize it. And that's very creepy. It gets under your skin in a way that I didn't expect it to in The Last of Us, and it definitely didn't for me in the video game. I think this scene added a lot to it.
Oh, for sure it did. Because so much of it is unexplained in the video game, right? Yeah. It's and you're okay with that. I don't need a whole thing of like, it was actually the molecule of no, that's fine. I take your word for it. In this one, you do need to show needs to be a little bit of telling, just to keep you going a little bit. Especially now that we know where the story is also going towards the end of number 1 and going into number 2, is that the future is an important part of this equation. It's not like we live for today. And I think that's one of the cool things, even just the pandemic thing, when he moves the dresser and what we know about spores. Yes. And so we know that that's a sign of clickers being around, or there's an area of infestation or something like that. And so he moves and you can see it's just a small shot of particles in the air. And you're like, it's hard not to think about spores and them wearing masks and then going like, right, yeah, weird, COVID. Yes. So I thought that was a really cool touch. Also, Anna Torv as Tess, awesome choice.
It's a great choice. The casting in this is just phenomenal in general. Actually, there's one. Okay, let's. I just want to say one quick thing before we talk about casting, and we'll get right back into it.
Of course.
One of the reasons why, and this isn't exactly related to the TV show, except for the jumping off point, which is that at the beginning of the show, they talk about how fungus does this to living organisms already. It keeps the host alive and to suit its own purposes and prevents death to keep it going so that the fungus itself can continue on. I've had this weird idea in my head about psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and how much it scares me because there's this whole movement right now, a groundswell of support towards magic mushrooms. I've done them myself, and I understand the vision that they give you and the belief that it's helping you and this and how dare I know it's dangerous.
You're such a bad boy. You're really the bad boy.
I'm just
podcasting.
I don't even care if the FBI is listening right
mushrooms.
now. But this is satire, so
yes. And if you are listening, thanks for subscribing. Think about joining our Patreon.
But the whole thing is there's this groundswell of like what it does for mental health. And everyone's like, no, you should do this. You should try it. You should blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if we believe that the fungus itself, the mushrooms are so smart, because they're like showing us some sort of intel or they're unlocking something in our mind. I'm like, we know that they are parasites. Parasites want to spread to other beings. What if the thing that they implant in your head is to convince you that they are good for you? So you tell other people they're good for them. And now all of a sudden there's mushrooms living in our bodies all over the place.
Hey, Mikey, were you thinking about that while on mushrooms or?
No, if I thought about that on mushrooms and thought I was being...
They'd be like, no, change your mind.
Yes.
We're not doing that.
We're not. Pay no attention to the mushroom behind the curtain. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to just that weird aside. Let's go back to casting on this because I think that it's a very brilliantly cast TV show. I think Bella Ramsey has a lot of work to do in terms of like in terms of being Ellie, because Ellie is like, that is our character. We love, as gamers, we love Ellie. You cannot fuck this up.
No.
So far, okay.
Okay. She's the biggest question mark, I'd say, too.
I actually think, yes, her, but I also think Gabriel Luna as Tommy Miller, I'm not. And I think he's a good brother character, but I just don't know that he's Tommy the way I imagine Tommy being Tommy.
See, that's so funny. When Pedro Pascal was casted as Joel, they needed to change the brother from being a long blonde-haired guy, and they changed it to a Hispanic actor, Gabriel Luna. And in that way, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And the construction thing is laid on a little bit heavier. I agree with you. I agree with you. It's a short vision of Tommy in which we will get more Tommy. Spoiler alert. But I'm curious about how that's going to go as well.
Yeah. So
that's the best I got.
Yeah, no. I'm with you on that as well. And I think, it's not worth focusing on him too much yet, except to say, yellow card, you're on notice, Tommy. You got a little bit of work to do. But Bella Ramsey, that's the one that I wonder whether or not she played the game and is trying to play Ellie as Ellie from the games, or if she's getting direction from Neil Druckmann or what it is, because sometimes she does things that feel like something Ellie would do, but not something that Bella Ramsey would do. And I don't know if that's that's her not disappearing in the character. It's a lot to ask of someone, but was I alone in that? Were you with me on that at all?
You know what? I was very hesitant going into this about Bella Ramsey. I was like, I don't see it. I will say too, like, don't forget The Last of Us originally too got in legal trouble with
Ellen Page.
The estate of Elliot Page of going, no, it's okay. Of saying like, you're imitating how I look, because originally supposedly that Elliot Page was supposed to be cast originally. Yes. That was the hope, and then they kind of designed the character around them, and then that didn't work out, and they just didn't change the design, and it looks so much.
It really does
like them. So and that's the trouble. And you're like, okay, cool. So I don't care. The look doesn't have to be perfect, right? Because we know that it's got to be the attitude and that like ferocious spirit that she has, like this like not wavering, always going forward kind of thing. And I also found it funny that both the voices of Ellie and Joel are in the cast.
Yes.
And so it would be kind of funny to have her on set and you kind of go like, hey, so if I did it like this, what do you think about like this? Well, kind of thing.
I wonder, if you're getting any advice for that,
Yeah, because the only other thing I'd say is that the moments in which she doesn't say anything and she kind of looks out into the sun and kind of like reassures herself, I thought those were her best moments, because to me, that's Ellie, where it's like she's never going to stand down in a fight or anything like that. But there's these moments where she has to stay positive. And I thought those were the moments I'm like, that's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah. Her overt kind of like mischievous troublemaker self.
Yes.
I'm not quite as sold on yet, but I wonder if they have, because you mentioned, Troy Baker, who played Joel, Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie.
Johnson, yeah.
They're both there. There's actually two other actors, Merle Dandridge and Jeffrey Pierce. Merle, who played Marlene, and Jeffrey Pierce, who played Tommy, are also cast as characters in there. And I you know what? For Neil Druckmann to do that, I'm sure he pulled strings to have that happen. That's fantastic. And now you're right. Those actors who have learned those characters better than anyone else are there to provide some guidance. But also, it's like training the person who you just got fired to like take over your job. Now you're training them on it or something. It's got to be a little awkward.
Oh, I completely agree with you. But at the same time, Ashley Johnson looks nothing like Ellie. No. Like, it would be the weirdest decision. Also, she's 35. You'd be like, hello, I'm Ellie. And you're like, oh, okay. It's like, hello, fellow kids. I get, but Troy Baker's the one where you're like, I kind of wonder, is he just a terrible actor? Because he's kind of a good looking guy and he's in good shape and he's tall and full head of hair. It's like, and he's got that great voice. You're like, well, why aren't you an actor? You kind of just nailed most of the hard parts.
Yes. But I don't think he could play Joel. I don't think he's quite the same sort of thing. So it's good to see that he has a role. That's nice. But
that's cool. So how about Joel? How about Pedro Pascal and as Joel?
I mean, Pedro Pascal he's always been one of my favorite actors. I really like him and everything that he does. And the limited numbers of things that we've seen him do so far, although he's getting into more and more. But I think I will say though that his first couple lines, I think it was more like the curtain's drawn. And I'm like, all right, give us Joel. And everything he said, I was like, was that Joel? I think I was overthinking it a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And there were a couple lines where he really is clearly trying to be someone else as opposed to just embodying someone else, if that makes sense. Like it does feel in the first scene or so that he's doing an impression of another character. And that could just be he's so used to playing Joel, and this is Joel pre shit going down, and that's just not what I'm used to seeing. But I don't know. What did you think?
I really liked it. Joel's a very subtle character. A large part of Joel is you need to be handsome. Is dick.
It is a large part of him. We all know it.
It is a large part. Oh my God. Absolutely. That's why he doesn't have a wife anymore. Killed her, impaled her. Is you just need to be ruggedly handsome and kind of a dick, but at the same time, that energy of like, it's okay, you're handsome.
Yeah.
And honestly, just do that. You saw him as being an incredibly good father, if not scatterbrained.
Sure.
But he loves his daughter, and that's clear. And now he's into the phase of being a dick, and we get to see him warm up again. I thought he did everything you needed to. He has the facial hair and the gray hair, and he looks good, and he wears denim, and saw the acoustic guitar in the back, and I'm like, there we go. That's all I need, baby.
I agree with that. I think he's done nothing except prove to me that he's more than capable of this role. I think I was overthinking it a bit. But speaking of, sorry, what?
I was just going to say, it's just like he filmed one episode of Last of Us, and it was more time on set than he spent of all of Mandalorian. So congrats to him. Also, I will say about him is that, so he did Arms Day, and Arms Day lasted for 6 months because my guy has some arms on him. Holy smokes.
He does have some arms on him. Woo! And I got to imagine like wearing, because he's always in that denim shirt. Having giant arms in a denim shirt cannot be that comfortable. I feel like you don't get much range of motion.
I'll never know.
Yeah.
Neither
of us are ever going to know what that's
never know.
Like. Yeah.
But yeah, it is truly remarkable that he has to. That's the other part too. Is like fucking video game characters wear one outfit.
Yes.
This poor guy's got to be like, here's that shirt again. Let's do this. Hope you like denim. Denim on denim.
You mentioned the acoustic guitar and Gustavo Santaolalla. I don't think I'm getting that right. Santaolalla. I don't know.
In your heart, you are though.
In my heart,
you're
I am.
Your best.
But he's the composer of The Last of Us. He wrote a lot of the songs on there, and he is now the composer of the original soundtrack for The Last of Us TV show as well. Yeah.
Yeah, when Mikey and I were deciding to do this episode and kind of figuring out what we were going to talk about, the first thing you and I talked about was, how do you like the episode? I liked it. The music, it's back. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. To be honest, the music is one of the biggest parts. Like, I hate this. This sounds so insane. Bigger than zombies, bigger than whatever. The music is one of the biggest parts of the game that adds this incredible, wonderfully moody atmosphere that makes you want to spend time in this world. It's sad, but it's oddly hopeful and warm. Yep. It's an incredible job.
Yeah, and I think that kind of, pun intended, underscores the entire theme of the of the TV show, and I think it's gonna work really well. I also think
it overscores, but
overscores. Yeah. You mentioned though the the music being a bigger part than the zombies. And I think that's something to take away, especially if you're not used to The Last of Us, if you don't have any experience with it. The zombies kind of are the least important part of the story. And I think that if anything in the game, sometimes they get in the way. I remember in The Last of Us Part 1 specifically, the scenes with the clickers, which are groups of enemies who we will become familiar with in the TV show eventually. They are armor plated in some capacity, so you can't just kill them by shooting them. They respond to sound, but they're blind. And they had instant death sequences in The Last of Us Part 1, which I found incredibly frustrating. And here I am trying to enjoy this subtle story of a father and a daughter figure, and I'm throwing my controller across the fucking room because I keep getting one tap by a goddamn armor-plated zombie. Talk about things that the TV show can do better, and it's take the frustration of dying again and again out of my hands. I think that's going to be very important to me.
Oh, I'll be very satisfied if that is what they do. Yeah, I you know what? Actually,
could you imagine if there was a scene in this TV show where Joel is like just gets annihilated and just has to rewind and annihilated and rewind, and then finally he just has one where he just like melees the thing. It's like, fine, kill me now, and he just gets his frustrations out, and then he finally has to do it the right way.
Yeah, he tries it a couple times, picks up the plank, doesn't work a couple times, goes the other way, picks up the brick and the bottle, and then does it like that. If there's a brick in a bottle, that will be my shake it baby. I'll be like, the brick,
100%,
yeah, 100%. I will say, that a big part of the first game too was a very young Ellie's reaction to Joel killing people.
Yes.
And it was always adorable, but also like very real that she was like, "Oh God, Joel!"
Jesus
like it's because
it's Joel. Yeah,
it was disgusting, and it was, but necessary and all that kind of stuff. But like, I always love that, and I hope they keep that in. Where even though Ellie is very tough and puts out a very tough exterior, she's still a little person that is probably terrified.
Yeah,
and so I would love the idea that Joel, really beats somebody's brains in, and she's like, Jesus, Joel, like, oh my God.
You kind of already had that at the end of this episode as well.
That's why I thought about it.
Because you have, I liked that setup where Joel is kind of a smuggler and a drug dealer. He's just looking to make money and get advantages however he can, look after himself and his family. And in doing so, he comes across a guard who purchases drugs from him. And then that guard catches him trying to escape. And Joel ends up, remind me, because I don't remember the first game as well. The scene where basically the guard puts, he's shining the light of his gun at him, just like has happened in the very beginning of the show where the guard shot his daughter, and you see Joel switch flips in him, and he's like, I'm going to go beast mode on this guy and beat him to death with my fists. Because it reminded him of the situation with his actual daughter. Was that from the original game? I don't remember.
No, I don't believe so. Someone tell us if we're wrong, but I don't believe so because I haven't got to that part yet, and I'm well into where they should be. And I thought the book ending, was so good. Yeah. To like reflect back to like, showing that he's not forgotten at all. Because there was that brief moment where he was tossing kids into the fire of dead bodies of children.
Yes.
And you thought, oh, maybe he's past this because the other person, his partner doing it, couldn't do it. And you're like, oh, maybe he's past this. And then he just flips a switch and just goes absolute temper mode. And I just thought that was so great to beat the guy death with his bare hands. And you're like, there we go. There's the game we're talking about. I will say the other one too is they show his sticker on the back that he's a veteran of the Desert Storm. Sure. Which makes sense. 2003 at the time, so he would have been 10 years before that. He would have been 24, 25. You're like, okay, that makes sense. And I think that's only hinted in the show that he is, or hinted in the game that he is a veteran, that he has some military experience of some kind. But it's never like come out and said it. And also another thing that a TV show can do that a video game can't. They just show you that for half a second. And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
I get it.
That's all I need to know. All right, cool.
That's so critical for TV shows, or something that really does differentiate TV shows with TV shows with video games, is that they, as a TV viewer, you do expect those things. Like, whoa, this guy's just like all of a sudden, and all it takes is showing the one bumper sticker. But you get that in movies and TV way more than you get it in video games. And I think that's because in a video game, if they really wanted to show you, your training sequence would be you as Joel in Desert Storm killing humans. Like that's like they could do something like that. Whereas a TV show has got like, we literally have 30 seconds to show this, and then we got to move on. Yeah.
Or the other thing is, we don't assume much from the background of our characters. You know what I mean? Like in video games, you could often, it is a regular guy in a lot of instances that you either build up with powers or experience points, all this kind of stuff. So you kind of assume they're like, oh, this is just a guy. That's okay. and pushed to extreme circumstances and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in a TV show, you're like, well, wait a second, why is he so good at this? Oh, sure. Okay, I get it. And I will say, just before we leave that, like, the beginning part too, the casting of Sarah is so good that I almost kind of thought, I'm like, no way she's going to die this quickly. She is perfect for this. No, she's adorable. She's got she was a good actor. I want to see her in other stuff. She was good.
Yeah. Yeah, she was great, and thankfully they gave her like a lot of screen time.
Yeah,
like she's gonna build a resume off of that performance alone. Yeah, I mean, she was great, and the whole time I was thinking, I'm like, are they gonna give us more flashbacks to her and Joel, because she's too good to just leave as is,
I completely agree with you. I was kind of like shocked by it. I'm like, wow, this is great. Maybe this is the whole episode. That's okay, kind of thing, and we, and I'm glad we're kind of getting to it, and also not showing the infected, but showing the outside world. And we already got the brief moments of like Ellie's wide-eyed of the first time being outside the walls in her whole childhood life.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really exciting because we know what can come in the future, and her being excited by new experiences, like a really fun thing.
Yeah, I'm excited to see which ones they kind of hold on to from the show and which ones they don't. All in all, though, Andrew, as a pilot, as your first introduction to The Last of Us as a TV show, where do you think this lands? Is this better than you expected? Is this kind of like what you expected, or was it lacking a little bit?
This is better than I expected. Even with HBO, even with Craig Mazin, and obviously we know we can get out of Neil Druckmann. I thought they were going to take it seriously, and you'd also started hearing the last couple of weeks that people are excited by it. You started to see like more non-traditional, more traditional media things that wouldn't cover video games telling us that like, oh, we're going to cover Last of Us on this next week's podcast. Right. And you're like, what? So you're like, oh, people have seen it and they think it's good. And so I started going like, oh my God, is it going to be good? And then you watch it and you're like, hey, that was great. Okay, wow. Because I think it's just a little bit too, when you start caring about something like you do with video games and how people will judge this thing that you've talked so positively about for a long time, you obviously lower your expectation going, oh God, this might suck and it's going to feel bad and I'm going to hate that. And then you watch it and you're like, man, I'm relieved. This is way better than I thought it'd be.
Yeah, I agree. I got way more out of this than I expected to. And I'll be honest, but I came around on this. I was excited for the show because it started to clue in. I'm like, maybe this is when things change. Maybe this is when things are going to get good. And I think that it kind of is. And part of me, once it was finished, was like, well, if there's anything to be concerned about, it's the fact that they kind of went beat for beat with the video game, and a very important part of the video game that's going to tug at your heartstrings, takes you on a roller coaster. It shows you a bit of everything that you need. And then I caught myself because I realized one of the things that makes the game so good and makes good games so good is that levels are set pieces. And if they do this properly, they can kind of just take set pieces, which is like, now we go to the radio tower and there's an episode out of it, and then there's the scene in the restaurant with Ellie and the, like, all of these things are kind of self-contained stories that feel like they will make good individual episodes. And I'm excited to see them do it that way because it's already there for the taking, and maybe they don't do too much to change the story or say anything different, but this episode proved to me that I don't really need anything changed. I just really like reliving this story.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I said when I was watching with my player one, who has not played the game, obviously only a couple of minutes in, I kept going like, that is right from the video game. And I think I said it like 5 different times. And I went, okay, I'm gonna stop saying that. I could say it all the time, I guess, because I couldn't believe how much was from it. And also, you're talking about like the episodes at different, very significant moments in the game.
Yeah.
In the trailers, they show another character, and I'm not going to ruin it, but there was a DLC that came out afterwards called What's Left Behind.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting version of a DLC. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to ruin it, but I'm going to at least get you interested in it a little bit, is to say that usually DLCs go in video games, they say, oh, there's a whole new side of this map you've never seen.
Sure.
Or this is a whole new guns and weapons and outfits and stuff like that. This was very different, in which it was a whole different story that was happening during Last of Us, where it's not a ton of action. It's actually more of a backstory to Ellie's development as a character, and some very significant things that happened to her as a young person. And so I saw a couple snapshots in the trailer of somebody else that she's talking to, and I'm like, oh, they're showing that? I loved that. That's actually one of the more like fundamental reasons why you love the character so much, because you see her be vulnerable and stuff too. And I thought, I was so excited that they used that as a story arc part of a character.
Yes. Do you think that there will be I mean, for those who have played the DLC Left Behind, you'll know, do you think we get one episode specifically focused on that?
I don't think it'll be a whole episode. There's only 9 episodes in this season, and they kind of have to tell remotely the full story. So I don't think so, but I think it'll be maybe half or something like that, because we do see them go to a mall and the mall lights up, and I'm like, oh my God, here we go. This is going to be great. So,
or maybe a story that kind of like weaves its way through, episode to episode. Here's 30 seconds of it here, a minute here. When she's sleeping, she's remembering some of it, or something along those lines.
That's a good point. Yeah, something like that, which I was really excited about, because you worry that from here on out, all it's going to be is zombies shooting, blah, 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 and which is what people want, and I get that. But,
I don't. Do people want that? I don't know that that's going to be good.
Last of Us lasted Last of Us, Jesus Christ, Walking Dead lasted 23 seasons, so there's got to be something to it. But I think what sells Last of Us different than most things is the people that you could spend time with. So I'm really excited to see that part too.
I am as well. I was very surprised going to bed last night how great I felt about the TV show. I said to I saw my parents earlier in the day, and they were and a preview came on, and they were like, "Oh, that's the thing." I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. That's the thing that's based on a video game. I've heard so much about it, and they were like, "Do you think we'll like it?" And I'm so used to saying no to that I was like, "Well," and I thought about it. I'm like, I think there is more shooting and more zombies and more everything in the game because that's fun to play. But I think that most of the human story can be told and focused on in this show, as opposed to just the shooting and everything. You need that to raise the stakes a little bit. But I think that even people who aren't into zombies, who aren't into video games, are really going to get a kick out of this. And I feel good about having recommended it to my parents, because I'm like, I even texted my mom this morning. I'm like, you know what? You guys actually might really like it.
Yeah, you know what? The thing is, you could also never know this was from a video game. No one could ever tell you this, and you would never know. Like, it seems like a story, and that's good. And to be honest, that's a good thing. That's a good thing for everybody, because that's a good thing for video games, because we don't have to make all video games the most video game of all time and stuff like that. That says good thing. And it says good thing for about television, that they can make a story adaptation that is so serious and so authentic that they don't even need to address the fact that, like, oh yeah, don't worry about this, because that's kind of silly, but this is here's the rest of the show, kind of thing. So I'm really excited by that too. I really do think this will have broad appeal, and I'm very encouraged by that first episode. So
same with me. Now, let me make a pipe dream prediction for you. Not pertaining necessarily, actually definitely not pertaining to The Last of Us season 1 or season 2. Is there a world in which you can imagine that The Last of Us 3 comes out alongside The Last of Us season 3, and they are not one-to-one telling the same story? They are companion pieces together.
Mikey, I would love to dream. Dreaming is important. But I don't think that'll happen. And I honestly don't think that'll
really? Oh,
no,
man.
I don't think that'll, as long as Craig Mazin's attached, I don't think so. Maybe he leaves in season 2. Maybe they're like, oh, we're going to make more without him. That also would make me nervous. But, I just don't think that's the way they work. Chernobyl was a limited series. You know what I mean? And I bet you HBO is, as much as they've done things with Game of Thrones and trying to make money, if that was the stated, lead time or, time of running, I think that's all they're going to do. I really do. And you got to wonder, how much time is Neil Druckmann going to have to make this game if he's spending all his time on the TV show with his Hollywood friends? Holly weird, if I call it anything.
And Andrew, that is great. And I'm going to tell them you said that. But so yes, I hear you that realistically speaking, it probably won't happen.
Yes.
But this means that Mazin and Druckmann and HBO and Naughty Dog have an opportunity to do something that has never been done before. And that's true. And something that would be cross-medium and revolutionary in a way that we've never experienced. Maybe that's enough. Give us your second season. We know you're giving us a second season already. I think they've already said that, right? Like, Mazin's
it was greenlit for 2 seasons,
right? So he already knows that. Now, what if one more season and we're going to do something that's never been done before? Maybe that's enough. Maybe it's enough. I don't know. I think that would be.
I completely agree with you. I think the only way you see that, though, is HBO Time Warner buying a part of Naughty Dog Productions. Like being the overlord of Naughty Dog Productions.
That's fair. That's a good point.
Because they're like, wait, you're going to make money too? No. We don't make money. I make money.
And then Disney buys them both, and then Microsoft buys Disney.
And then Apple buys, and then it just keeps going from there. And a bigger fish comes along and eats a smaller fish. Yeah. And then we live under one company and we're all fucked. Yes. But it's so funny when you come onto these things, and we've done so many recaps. We do recaps over on our Patreon. Patreon, for Marvel movies, and we do it for, big fundamental things that we want to talk about. I don't think we've ever had a thing where you kind of go away like, so that was good. Wow. Okay. And I'm just so encouraged by this. I'm leaving this knowing I've got 8 more of them. Oh, I am so excited.
It was funny because you and I talked this morning and we were like, we weren't necessarily sure if we were going to do this, if this was going to be the focus. And I sent you a message and I was like, so did you watch it? And you're like, yeah, I watched it. Did you watch it? I was like, yeah. But in my mind, I knew that you loved it already. It was just of a certain quality that I'm like, I know he's going to love it. And I know he knows that I love it.
Yeah.
And it's so rare because, we've, like you said, we've seen other offshoots and we've played other games where I was like, I'm pretty sure he'll like it, but I'm not sure. This one was just like, I know he's going to love this and it's going to be great.
You know what's so funny though? I've gotten so many texts about Last of Us, knowing people that like we'll talk about on the podcast or, that we care about this kind of stuff. And everyone goes like, so, what'd you think? And we're just like testing the waters of like, I really liked it. So, oh, good. I really liked it too. Oh my God. Everyone's just wanting to spill about it. Yeah. And what a good, if anything, making something creative and people just can't wait to talk to you about how good it is. That's a really good project. So it's really exciting. Mikey, what is the rest of the schedule going to be for us talking about this show? Because there's 9 more episodes, right? There's 8 more.
There's 9 more episodes, and we're definitely going to do more check-ins. If you just found this podcast because you were searching the Last of Us podcast, thanks for giving us a shot. Yeah. We often talk about just more strictly video games. We do a lot of top 10 drafts. Sometimes we play games, give them a retro score, play them in the modern day, rate them in the modern day. We've just been having a lot of fun with things like lists and drafts and playing games and stuff like that. So we're going to be weaving a lot of that into it as well. But keep Hugo weaving a lot of it back in. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they call us sometimes.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, because Agent Smith.
Oh, that's very good.
That's Hugo Weaving.
Yeah, that's Hugo Weaving.
Sorry, you blushed so hard you turned more red than the Red Skull himself.
I was going to say the Red Skull himself, but only in Captain America 1.
Only
not
in Captain America
else.
1. He wouldn't be caught dead playing the Red Skull again. So we'll do some check-ins on the main feed as well, and just keep it locked here. Subscribe, give us a rating and a review, and send us an email as well. Hit us up on social media at Retrograde Pod, at Retrograde Andy, at Retrograde Mikey on Twitter. You can send us an email to retrogradepodcast@gmail.com. Let us know how much more of this you want us to cover. Yeah. If you want bi-weekly check-ins or companion pieces or whatever it is, we love talking about this show, and we love giving you what you want, baby.
Oh my God, we want you to be happy, because we love every single one of you, and we can't wait to talk to you soon. My name's Andrew Bascom, and with me as always is the bad boy of podcasting, Mr. Bebop himself,
Mikey Aaronworth.
This is the Retrograde Podcast.
Game over. But 8 more episodes to go.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
You never asked what my screen name was.
Owl City.
Why is my name Owl City?
The Fireflies!
The Fireflies!
The Fireflies!
Yeah!